Hello and welcome back to another episode of Impact Factor. I am your host, Katie Van Aken, and this week I had the chance to catch up with an old friend of mine who was a grad student in the department with me, followed by a postdoc in my lab, and it was really fun to catch up, and I hope you enjoy. Here is Professor Babak Anasori. Okay, so Babak, I don't know how much I know about this actually. So here's my question for you is tell me a little bit about your undergraduate experience. I know it was not in the US, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my undergraduate, I did my undergraduate in material science and engineering, and I did it in Iran, where I'm originally from. And the way it is in Iran, it's slightly different. That in a sense that we have this university entrance exam that happens once a year. It's like SAT but competitive. And we have two of these exams. One is for the public universities, and the other one is for still public, but the ones that you pay tuition. So, and for the one with tuition, you select your major and university even before you take the exam. So, not knowing you're going to select a major.
Huh.
And the second one for the public, the national universities, you do the exam and then you get a form of 100 choices and you choose your university and major. So going to the university, you don't have this option of changing, at least at my time, changing your major. You enter first day knowing that this is your major. So in my high school, I was always, I was and still am this curious kid of want to know how things are built, buildings, bridges, parts. So, I was thinking civil engineering, mechanical engineering, or even architectural engineering, have a little bit of art and building and designing things. So for the first exam that I needed to choose, I chose civil engineering in a university in Tehran, where my hometown, where I grew up, the capital of Iran. And for the second one, we did the exam, and I wanted to go to the Sharif University, which is, Sharif University of Technology is like, we call it the MIT of Iran, which is, the top university of all the engineering majors. So I selected a whole bunch of different engineering, and one of those majors was material science and engineering. I didn't know what it is at all, but it was one of the engineering, and I read a little bit about it, and I asked people, and people usually say, well, we don't know much about it, but it's about stuff, materials, how things are built. So cool, I'm going to put that also down. So the results came out. I was admitted to the civil engineering in that, another university in Tehran. And I also got admitted to Sharif University. So yay! What major? Material science and engineering. Well, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to figure it out. So I entered the Sharif University to the major of material science and engineering, not knowing what I really signed up for.
Wow. And here you are today, We'll get to that.
Yes.
Oh my God, that's so funny. So then what did you think? Did you like it? You must have liked it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at the beginning, the first year you're taking the, general courses and really still not knowing what you're doing. You just tell people that I'm doing material science and engineering, not even knowing, the first year. But as slowly getting more of the technical classes, I started, developing this passion, started like enjoying the classes more and more. There were certain classes I enjoy even more, like thermo. We had thermo 1, thermo 2. Even I went beyond and I took a advanced thermo, which was a tech elective for a master's student. And I enjoyed it more and more every day. And the full, that course of love for material science really happened when I did my senior thesis, which is the senior year. You need to do a thesis, 1 year project, and you could be a team of two. So me and one of my good friends in college, my buddy, we form a team and we work on aluminum silicon carbide composite through warm compaction. I enjoyed it so much. At that moment, I realized that, hey, you can build things at the smallest scale possible. Now that builder mindset, working at the atomic level, was so rewarding that that was really the course that, the time that led me to really dive deep and say, this is really enjoyable. I really want to focus on this and continue forever.
Wow. And then was it that project that made you think maybe I should continue studying this and do a PhD?
Yeah. Yes. Well, I always wanted to do graduate school.
Okay.
So going into the senior year, I wanted to go to do masters. Now, also for masters in Iran, you need to do another entrance university exam. And that exam was also similar, multiple choice. This time, instead of being on math, physics, and chemistry, we had it on thermokinetics, physical properties of materials, mechanical, every technical courses that we had, and we needed to take that. So I studied for that. We took that, and then you get a rank again. You select your university and field of study based off of your rank. So I took that. I did well. My rank, I think, was 35. So I could still select Sharif because I think that year they had the class of like they could admit up to 60 students. But I chose to go to another university of Tehran, like MIT versus Harvard, that you have more of like beyond engineering. So I went to University of Tehran, top university that has med school and engineering, and then taking classes at that time, with the research background, all that was much more enjoyable. And I was just in the course of taking classes and doing research.
For your master's?
Yes, for my master's.
But it wasn't enough.
No, it was not enough. Doing the research for my master's, basically, we were working on something that we didn't have that much of equipment for it.
Okay.
My project was to work on cemented carbides. And cemented carbides, for anyone who's gone to a jewelry store, seen these, wedding bands or rings that they are, like solid metals, like tungsten carbide, cobalt. When they sell you tungsten carbide, it's not 100% tungsten carbide.
Oh.
Because tungsten carbide is so hard and high melting temperature that if you want to really sinter it to solid body, a sintering process is basically where you, for your listeners who are not material science major, it's basically you push the grains, the particles, to form one solid body. The best example can be, when you have sugar powder on the top of like dessert, and you put a flame, and you can kind of like fuse them together.
Like creme brulee.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Without melting the whole thing, you can melt it, but you can even avoid that. So for something high melting temperature, you need that. But even with applying high pressure and high temperature, you cannot really fuse them together. So you need a binder. And the binder usually is cobalt, nickel. I use copper. So I was working on tungsten carbide with copper, putting them together to form cemented carbides. It was very challenging. Sorry, go ahead.
No, the binder is what they don't tell you when they sell you tungsten carbide rings, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So when you buy tungsten carbide ring, it's 10-15% cobalt or nickel, because that is required to have these grains glued together. Still, you need high pressure and high temperature, but at least with cobalt, nickel, or I use copper, you can form these fully dense samples and then make a ring out of it.
Cool. So you do another research project for your master's, I presume. And then what made you what made you want to keep going to school?
Yeah. There are always many factors. There's not
Yeah.
one, but like, and deciding what to do is always like a lot of variables that can be out of our control. But the idea for me was I didn't want to get an industry job. I knew that I liked research and be creative, like that I don't have this boundary of, well, this one we are not interested. I was, and I'm still, am very interested in fundamentals. So I knew that I like research. At the same time, I always enjoyed teaching so much.
Hmm.
Growing up as a kid, I used to tutor my cousins in math, physics, chemistry, and then undergraduate, my job was tutoring and teach, math, physics, chemistry, and teach even in my high school. And fun fact about teaching for me is that when I go to teach a class, and it was even more when I was younger, still I have this change of energy. If I go to a class with my energy level being at 100, when I come out of that class of 1 hour and 15, 1 hour, 30 minutes, my energy level would be at 500. It just
Wow.
boosts my energy interacting with students and teaching them something. It was at the level that I remember, like when I was teaching, I am still, I become so hyperactive that I need to cool down. My friends who used to tell me, like, you need to chill, Babak, right after, like, then I can be normal because I was
Yeah.
just full of energy. So I love teaching. I loved it. But I also love research. So doing high school teaching was not really something that will fit all of my interests. So the other route was to continue with my education.
And the ultimate goal being to be a professor. That was something that you had seen balance both of those, seen as a career path that would balance both of those loves, right?
Yes, yeah, but I would be lying if I say that I could see myself being a professor when I finish my master's.
Okay.
Because, like when you do your master's, and then you look at the professors, they're like way higher level. At least in
Hmm.
my university was the feeling. So you feel like, well, I can never get there, but it could be a route that I want to pursue. So it was not that I know exactly I want to become a professor right away, because
Yeah.
always we need to add a level of uncertainty to everything, and I always want to include that in my vision. So yes, but not if I say 100%, no.
Yeah. Yeah. But then continuing to get your PhD leaves that door open as a possibility, right? Which
Yeah,
is
yeah, absolutely.
worth
So
worth it.
that was, if you want to, I was thinking if you want to go that route, that is the only way, that you need to continue education, you need to get your PhD. And that is the only route to get closer to becoming a professor.
Nice. Okay, so let's talk about applying for your PhD. So,
Mhm.
was your goal always to come to the US?
Yes, I wanted to come to the US to do my PhD, and really fun observation that I had in my undergraduate, that anytime we had a professor that they did their PhD in the US, at least in my observation, they were better teachers.
Interesting.
Yeah, and maybe, and now I think why it can be, because when you do PhD in the US, you still required to take classes. In many
Mhm.
cases, if you want to become a professor, you can TA a class, become a teaching assistant. So you practice teaching, you get exposed to teaching. So that can be one reason, or it can be a very small sample size. So, my bias observation, but that was something that I noticed. Again, it can be bias observation. So this is not statistically proven.
Okay. Noted, but if someone wants to study that, we're
Yeah.
open for it.
Yes, exactly.
Um okay, so you you were only looking in the US, were you looking for specific research areas or programs or cities? What was kind of your criteria at that point?
I was
Do you
open.
remember?
Yeah,
It was a long
well,
time ago.
yeah, it's been a long time ago. All of these, but no, I was open
Hmm.
to different areas of the country, and I wanted to do material science. And as now you might guess, I was working on composites for my undergraduate master. So something composite related will make me more qualified for that. So I was applying for things that they were involving in a composite idea, and also knowing like, okay, because you have very limited knowledge of who has availability in terms of position. So like through your network, like maybe this university, that university, and so, but at the end I was open.
Hmm. And you ended up at Drexel,
Yeah, so one
which
of the
is where
schools.
I met you.
Yeah, exactly. So I applied. I emailed my advisor, my PhD advisor, Professor Michel Parsoum, and applied for Drexel. And he said, yes, I have an opening and I'm interested in hiring you as a PhD student. So I joined his team.
And thank goodness, or else I wouldn't have met you.
Yeah, yeah, we would have met each other. Yes, absolutely. So thanks to
So,
Dr. Barsoum.
Michelle Barsoom, yeah. Um, so, well, first, I guess, what was your experience as a PhD student coming in with a master's and coming in as an international PhD student? Do you remember anything about that kind of early first year?
Yeah, obviously, coming as a first year, anywhere you go, when you are not, you enter a new country, things are new, and it can be different degrees of novelty for every aspect of life. So it was overwhelming. We moved, my wife and I, Beta, we moved to US, to Philadelphia together. And we didn't know much, and we needed to build, our life together
Hmm.
in a few days because we arrived on January 1st, and the semester started January 4th. And
Nice.
so it was packed, eventful few days, but thankfully we had great friends that they helped us settle, and even before coming they helped us finding an apartment and have all of those. So it was very helpful. Otherwise it would be just impossible to
Mm.
manage everything in few days, to have a life, to some degree, obviously. And that we could start, continuing our lives in here in the US. So that was the experience. And in terms of coming with masters, obviously you have more, exposure to research now, comparing, my students or anyone who come directly from undergraduate. So you have more background in research, more knowledge about different tools. So that was a plus in terms of understanding. But still, every project you need to learn everything from scratch.
Yeah. Were you researching something that was composites and also s- similar to what you were doing for your master's, or can you give us a high level view of what your topics were?
Sure. Yeah. So in Dr. Barsoom's lab, I continued working on composites, and one of the
Mhm.
areas that even now I'm working on is the area of composites. But Dr. Barsoom is well known as the father of this ternary carbides and nitrides known as max phases. He kind of rediscovered them in late 90s and early 2000. So everyone joining his lab at the time in 2009 was working on max phases one way or another. And my thesis was on max phases put in magnesium metal to
Mhm.
improve magnesium mechanical properties. And also, the idea was that by adding max phases, we can make magnesium form nanocrystals.
Hmm. Was
And
it a specific type of max?
So
like the
yeah,
chemical composition?
we were looking at different composition of max phases. The one that I mainly focused on was a composition of titanium, aluminum, and carbon. It was titanium to aluminum carbide. So it has 2 layers of titanium with 1 layer of carbon in between 2 layers of titanium. I'm talking about atomic level. And then layers of aluminum bonding these stacks of titanium and carbon together.
And magnesium specifically, what would be an application where that would fit in?
So magnesium usually it use it as a light metal in different applications for aerospace where you care about weight. So magnesium composite, if you can improve magnesium, it doesn't have that much of strength. So if you can improve the mechanical properties, it would be a plus. So aerospace or also in armor would be another application. Army Research Office was funding this research when I joined Dr. Barsum's lab, and that was basically the main interest.
Cool. And I presume that you had some experience teaching as a PhD student?
Yes, yeah. So that was one of the other challenges as coming as an international student. So I love teaching, and I was doing well in terms of teaching in Iran. But when I started here, as you also might remember, we had the what was it called? The 220 course, which is Intro to Material Science, which is required for all engineering majors. So usually the class is about 400 student size on average per semester or per quarter at Drexel. And because it's a lecture hall, massive class, then the 400 students will be divided to about 15 or more recitation classes. So one of the things that PhD students could sign up for was becoming the recitation instructor, which was very useful because you get to teach a 30-student class and you also get evaluated at the end. I remember the first semester when I did this, I was just told that you go and solve the problems. And I did that. But it was not the best way. And I remember my evaluations were all like really low, and barely any student even took the evaluation at the end. I think 4 or 5, but they were all the unhappy students. So it pushed me to really rethink the way I teach. And then I ended up teaching that recitation 4 more or 5 more times. But I started with a lecture at the beginning, a review lecture of that chapter or that week and all of that. It became a very popular class with high level of evaluation, and students even nominated me for multiple teaching awards. Even one semester, one quarter, I needed to do a TA because Dr. Barsum was low on funding. So I became the TA of this class. And then I did the review lecture right before the exams. There were 3 exams, and I had whole 400 students. And speaking of the energy level, the larger the class, I would get even more energy. So it was a fun experience that I did, and I enjoyed it a lot.
That's great. I feel like, well, I think every PhD student should take any opportunity to try teaching. One, because if you think that you're going to be a professor at any point in your life, that's something you're going to have to do. So
Right.
better to find out if you hate it earlier in life.
Yeah.
Right. But I think it's also it's really good experience, and it, to understand a topic well enough to teach it means that you've understand it pretty well. So.
Yeah, that's very true. The part that you mentioned about whether you like it or not, I always, when I have a student and they tell me that I want to become a professor, I ask them, the first question is, how much do you like teaching?
Yeah.
If they say, yeah, I'm okay, I said, probably becoming a professor might not be for you. Because teaching is a part of the job of the professor that it's just required. You don't get, when you write a research article, you get it published, you get recognized. when you write research proposals, you get many decline and rejections, but when it gets funded, you have again some funding for your lab. Teaching, you just teach for the students. So it must be in you that you enjoyed it so much that when you go to class, you can really give that energy to the students. I
Yeah.
agree with you.
So important.
Yeah.
Um, so between this and research and classes, was there anything else that you participated in as a PhD student?
Yes. Yeah. Uh, Quite a few. Even sometimes I create it, as you might remember. So we in our department we were very active. As you remember, we had a lot of we had the materials camp. That was a 1 week event run by ASM. We had the 2 day course, which was at the beginning of each year for freshman engineers that they get to learn materials. Um, I always thought there will be many like me that they have no clue what material science and engineering is. And it is our job to teach them how fascinating this field is. And they should join us. They should come to the bright side. And other things. One of the main things that I did outside research and teaching that is kind of like my work hobby was creating these science as art, which you have these microscopy images that they're all computer generated because you use electrons instead of light. So it's just electrons raster the surface, and it's like a scanner create a black and white image. But it has enough contrast that sometimes when you add color to those, false coloring, you can use any software, it can turn to a piece of art. So I used to do that, and I got quite a few awards and recognitions for this, multiple recognition, and that was something I enjoyed a lot.
It became a very popular um like side event at the conferences we would go to,
Right. Yes.
where people from all over would submit these. Like it was hard to win. And Drexel always looked really good because you were always in there and some other people were very good at it.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember. That was the fun part of that. In materials conferences, almost all of them have this event, which is, a fun side activity. Yeah, I agree.
What did you like about it? I think I remember asking you this once and you told me that you've always sort of been interested in photography and that side of things. Is that did I
Yeah.
make that up?
Test troops. Yeah, I during my undergraduate, I used to take a lot of photos. That's going back now. Speaking of age, the time that phones did not have cameras, so digital cameras were new. So I had one. Thankfully, my parents were able to buy one for me, and I used to take photos every day. So photography was part of, what I like to do. And then with the scanning electron microscope, use of microscope, I was able to capture photos now at the smallest scale. So photography was one. Also, like drawing and creating art was something that I was always interested. But again, in my opinion, I might not, I did not have that much of, creativity to create something from scratch,
Yeah.
from blank surface, blank um, page. But with these microscopic images, I had the backbone that I just needed to visualize something and add, different layers and different colors to make it pop, the thing that I see it, and make it visible to everyone else.
Yeah. Very cool. So now, do you still do this in your hobby as your work hobby?
Yes, but now I mostly do that with my students. In fact, today we
Okay.
had a discussion, and my students and my postdoc, they came and discussed few of these images of how we can that we are working for one of these conferences that's
Ah,
coming up. And so I kind of like guide them. Sometimes I teach them because this level of art, I think it is something that you can teach, and I've done that. Students need to have a little bit of interest in them, but the rest is, you can use, these software tools and colorize them. So yes, I do, but not fully myself. I just because don't have time, but I get to enjoy my students creating these nano art pieces and work with them. Also,
And yeah, go ahead.
as a side activity, I started a competition called nanoartography. That it is the result of my time at Drexel. I think we haven't gone to right after PhD in our conversation, so that is more of a spoiler. So I don't know if should I continue or keep.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So a transition from my PhD, I did my postdoctoral research at Drexel. As you know, we were in the same group for my postdoc with Professor Yuriko Gotzi. And as you know, Yuri is so open-minded. You bring a crazy idea to him and you think that he's going to shut it down, and you get more support than before. So anytime I had, some crazy ideas, I would bring it to him. We should do this with the group. We should do that with the group. We did a lot of competitions in the group. Remember, we had 365, 24/7 that you also presented all of the PhD students. So, and one of them was, I told Yuri, we should start our own competition. I'm so interested now that I've done my part of contribution to art. Now I want to create this venue for everyone around the world, not just people who go to this or that conference, for anyone who is interested. And he was so supportive. And I created nanoartography, and this year will be the 7th year of nanoartography that we are continuing it. And I still have support of Yuri, and it is an independent competition that anyone can participate by submitting one image and win. Right now, we have the first place prize for $1,000 just for a photo. And my goal is to bring more visibility to what we do in science, and hopefully more visibility to material science.
Very cool. And that competition is going on right now, right? Is there?
Yes,
The deadline is something?
nanoartography. Yes, the submission deadline every year happens September 30th of every year.
Okay.
So we are very close to the deadline and for submission. So if any one of your listeners have any research image, we call it nanoartography, but it's more of the science as art. So we are not bound to the nano size. Anything at the microscopic level or even beyond. Sometimes we have submissions done by computation. So anything that you can present science in an appealing way can enter the competition.
So cool. I think one of the coolest things about that, and I was always impressed by it and tried it a few times, is that it's a different side of science, and it sort of takes you, like, being a PhD student is always so draining because you're like can't really turn off your brain thinking about your project. But if you give yourself a different type of project that seems tangentially related to your PhD, you sort of trick your brain into taking a break and flexing the creativity muscles a little bit. And I think it's I couldn't say enough good things about that from like a mental health standpoint.
That's very true. That's very true. That was one of my also, activities to get my mind off of research. And it was so helpful for me by doing this that, you're not really working, but still you're generating things that they are fun, have your mind off, but they can still be adding lines to your CV.
Yeah.
And you feel that you're contributing to something beyond just research. And it became, for me, one area that I remember when I was applying for jobs, I had my awards listed before my papers because at the beginning, right after my PhD, I had the longer list of awards than my publications.
Yeah.
just because of these competitions. And it was just, like my interest in doing things beyond research. It was mental health is so important. And my way and your way, at least to some degree, was just having our minds off and focusing on the artistic side of our research.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so let's move on in your life. So you hinted at this, but you switched groups in the same department to do your postdoc. And that was a decision based on sort of the need to have that step before a professor.
Yes. Yeah. In material science and engineering, doing a postdoc is almost something required. And even there is no written rule for applying for any jobs. But when you do a postdoc, you're more prepared for a job as a professor, because in your postdoc, it really depends on you, your advisor, your research group. But in postdoc, you can get exposed to proposal writing, to editing papers that they are not necessarily written by you,
Mm-hmm.
in advising PhD undergraduate students. So you kind of practice all of these under supervision. So they are so essential for if you want to go to academia. Um, I stayed in the same department, material science and engineering at Drexel. And there are a few reasons. One was personal, family. As you know, my wife, Beta, she was at the time doing her PhD in the environmental engineering department, which is about maybe our offices were maybe 200 steps away, two different buildings, but we had this sky bridge connecting. So I wanted to stay local, obviously, but like going to Penn, like local universities, or stay in Philly. And the research at the department and in Yuri's group and Michel Barsoum's group was growing more rapidly than before because of the new discovery of the 2D material at that time called MXenes, the transition metal carbides and nitrides that were first discovered at Drexel in 2011. So the other option was to stay and focus on this new area. It was about 2 years and a half after the discovery, so the field was very new. There were a lot of things that we could do. So one idea was I can study the mechanical properties of MXene. And that was the beginning of my postdoc. And I reached out to Yuri and Michelle. Both I discussed the idea, and first I basically worked with them to develop a proposal for Office of ARO, Army Research Office, for a 1-year project, and it got funded. Obviously, they were leading and submitted it. I was just helping developing the idea and then drafting it. And that was the beginning of my postdoc at Yuri's group.
Nice.
And I stayed for 4 years.
Because it was so much fun.
Yes. Yeah. Well, even more than 4 years. Yeah, it was absolutely fun. Doing a postdoc with Yuri, I always, even at that time, when you are in an environment, sometimes you say, well, you don't appreciate it as much. Like when you are doing your PhD, at the end of your PhD, you kind of like tired and fed up with everything. But in my postdoc time with Yuri, even with multiple years, I always enjoyed it and always told everyone, this is basically the honeymoon of my career, because I get to do a lot. I was working nonstop, but it was fun. You had the freedom of doing anything you want to do. You had the support of Yuri, and he, to me, always was a boost of energy. We were always joking that Yuri, gets his energy from coffee, drinks, coffee, and because he doesn't sleep as much. And then he passed that energy to us by just speaking and all of that. So yeah, it was really fun and very, very instrumental for my research now as a professor.
Aha, good transition. So, you are now a professor.
Yes.
And you've been a professor for how long?
For 4 years now.
Okay. So what was that process like? Well, once you were like, okay, it's time for me to leave my postdoc. My understanding is that the application process for professor jobs is difficult and time consuming and could not be successful based on the number of openings and the number of applicants. But what was your experience?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It is overwhelming. It is a very tough process. And I was on the job market for almost 2.5, I would say, cycles. So
Mm.
it was not, the first year I decided and I got the job and boom. I was getting, phone and on-site interviews, but many of them didn't go anywhere because it's a very, as you said, first of all, you need to develop your application. And the application is not just your CV. You need to have a solid research statement, a solid teaching statement, basically sharing your vision about research, teaching. And more recently, we have also a diversity and inclusion statement, your vision about how you can integrate diversity in your research, in your teaching, and all of that. And it must be unique. It cannot really, copy paste or gather someone else's idea. It's going to be so obvious to the hiring search committee. So my research idea, my research statement didn't change from first cycle to third or almost third cycle. It was just the right timing and right location and interacting with everyone. It was exhausting. I remember like the third cycle, I was just at the level again. The good news was that I had the job secure with Yuri, so it was not that I will be kicked out. But still, you're working on this and you want to get it done and get settled. So it is an exhausting process. And for that, as soon as I got my position through the Materials Research Society, MRS, I was offered to become the chair of the new subcommittee called Early Career Professional Subcommittee. And the first activity that we started through that subcommittee, and that was something I shared with the subcommittee members, and they were all supportive, thankfully. We started this poster session networking event at the conference in the fall that it is open to anyone who is in the market applying for a faculty position, that they can present their work, their research, their vision for research teaching as a poster and interact with the search committee members. At the beginning, this year we're doing the 5th year, and it is growing and growing. And now more of the search committee members, they are aware of it. They are also planning to come. It's a very packed event because you have 80 applicants, and sometimes we had up to 30 search committee members signing up. So you have multiple interviews. In my opinion, it's so valuable because sometimes on paper, you look at, a hiring committee, look at all the application package. I feel like maybe yes, maybe not. But then when you interact, because you're hiring your colleague, you interact with the applicant, you feel like, wow, this can be a good, colleague to be added to my department. So it creates new opportunity for those who have this way of chance of getting a faculty position.
And it's cool too because I feel like, the MRS conference is a place where all of those people are likely to be anyway, right? Like you're all going to be in the same place. And it's, likely that a materials PhD or postdoc is looking for a job in a materials department somewhere else. So it's a lot. I feel like it's a good use of a conference too.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was applying, I was always thinking, why materials community do not have this event? Why don't we have this that we can, have whoever is interested and applying can be presenting and have the search committee members coming in And yeah, MRS is I think the right venue and the right time for hiring for most places. Some places they might say, well, we are already closing shortlisting, but usually, end of November, early December is the right time that most of the searches they're closing and shortlisting. So it is the right time, and you have the nice level of crowd in there.
That's cool. And you are a professor where?
At Purdue University.
And how big is your group?
My group right now, I have 6 PhD students and many undergraduate students that I love to have more and more undergraduate students, because my introduction to passion and love for material science was through research. So I feel like it can be the same thing for my undergraduate students. So I always look for motivated undergraduate students, and as soon as they start, I always pair them with a mentor, whether a PhD student or postdoc. Right now I have 1 postdoc and 2 masters. So I'd say
pretty good size.
Yes. Yeah.
Keeps you busy, right?
Yes. I love interacting with my students.
And if I were to ask what your scientific focus is, you mentioned you're still doing composites a little bit, but
yes,
how would you answer that question?
So right now, the focus of my research group, we are continuing working on this novel 2D materials that we all studied at Drexel, and the 2-dimensional transition metal carbides and nitrides named MXenes. And the area of focus, one is new novel synthesis of novel MXenes. That's one area that we're still continuing. But more of the application areas that my group focuses on one is composite. So we're looking at using this nanomaterial, this 2-dimensional 1 nanometer thick carbides, to integrate into other ceramics. Going back in the story, remember that tungsten carbide and metal? So now, the vision is, can we use MXene as a replacement for that metal? That you make a solid made fully out of carbides, but because you have this 2D nano flakes, can you wrap every grain of the hard ceramic, tungsten carbide, silicon carbide, zirconium carbide, with these sheets of MXenes, and then sinter them together? Can they be working as additive, that you don't add any metal and maybe have some layering at the grain boundary? Can we improve the fracture toughness? There are a lot of unknowns, which is something I love to do, the fundamental research, that can we do this? We always start with this question, can we do this? So making hybrids, making composites, something that we work on for structural application. For one area is the area of ultra high temperature ceramics, UHTCs, and these are the carbides or borides. They have the same composition. If you look at their composition, they are tantalum carbide, for example, or zirconium diboride. So the same area, early transition metals with carbon boron, and use these for maybe, for example, hypersonic flights or other application. The other area is energy, but I'm not working on energy storage. I work more on electrocatalysis. One area is hydrogen evolution reaction that we use MXene for electrocatalysis. So these are the 2 areas of activity with MXenes that we work on.
Cool. Well, I wish you luck. It sounds exciting and busy.
Thank you. Yes.
So, Babak, before I move to my 3 wrap-up questions, what outside of work do you do for fun?
Yeah, obviously I work a lot. I'm so thankful to my wife. She's so understanding and always so helpful in all aspects, because I do work a lot, but I have this idea that we must have solid separate between work and family. I don't like to call it work-life balance, Because when you say this, at least in my opinion, when you say work life, you kind of like separate work from living.
Yeah.
I say work life and family life, or work life and personal life balance. Because if you think about it,
Different lives.
yeah, you're gonna,
Yeah.
we all, if you start working from age 15, 16, you're gonna work for 50 years. So we better live that. We better enjoy
Yeah.
it. So I always remind my students and everyone that you must enjoy it, that you live that 50 years. Otherwise, you're going to lose that. You're going to count the minutes to go home and have a life. So I really believe in a solid, the work life and family or personal life balance. Things that I do as hobbies, I still love building things. So at home, I do a lot of, home projects, whether it's in the yard or at home, fixing flooring, or bathroom. All these little projects, as much as I have time, I enjoy it. Just a matter of time. And yeah, we do that, and I enjoy it. I cook, and I enjoy cooking. It's funny, also in cooking, as you know, I like making composites.
Yeah, I was gonna say
And
cooking's like building things too.
right, yeah. And the kebabs that I make, they're all like the composite kebabs that, you have this beef patty that you need to have the right binder to put it on those sword-sized skewers.
Yep.
This summer, I took all of my students and team to a pavilion in a park and taught them how to make these kebab composites, and everyone made one skewer,
Nice.
and none of them fell. So it was, good engineering of the composite. Yeah. I've done also, as you know, when I was in Philadelphia, I was doing some improv comedy. So, these things outside work. So, yeah.
That's good. That sounds like a nice mix of things
Yeah.
to keep you busy.
Yes, and not to mention the art side, that sometimes that if I get time, I usually nowadays edit some of my students' images, and that is another work related, but still not real work related. I always remind my colleague, if we see each other outside work, if they start talking about work, and if it is a family gathering, I stop them. I said, if you
Yeah.
want to talk work, let's meet at work, come to my office, let's have lunch, and we can chat.
This
We
is
have
not
family
work
around
time.
us.
Yeah.
No, we should not separate them by keep talking about what we were talking during work days.
That's good. I'm not good at that either. I just like to talk about whatever. So,
Yeah.
um, all right. Well, I have 3 questions for you.
Mhm.
I guess you could call this a lightning round, but I don't think it'll be that fast, so that's okay. Um, all right. So, question 1 is, what was something challenging that you faced during your PhD?
Um, well, PhD is challenging. If it
The
is
whole
not,
thing.
yeah, it's not PhD, right? That's the whole goal, that you choose a challenging topic. But other than the research idea, and challenge of research, for me at the beginning was I was involved in multiple research projects,
Mm,
and I did not know how to manage all of them in parallel. Thankfully, Dr. Borsum is very involved with his students, so he was following up that, it helped me realize how I can manage these things. So at the beginning, it was very challenging to run multiple projects. Each of them will lead to different papers. Some of them I could not even include in my PhD dissertation,
yeah.
but they were so useful, because that's how I also do research now, and I encourage my students to work on multiple projects. But I guide them that we need to have this planning, and this is how we plan it. But at the beginning of my PhD, that was one challenging that I had at the beginning.
Yeah. That's probably pretty common, actually, especially
Yes, yeah,
in labs where that's encouraged, to do multiple things.
yeah, exactly.
Um, all right, question 2. What advice would you give to yourself in year 1
Take it
now?
easy.
Yeah?
Take it easy. Yes. Um, I think anyone who does PhD, we are perfectionists.
Yeah.
We started, like a PhD, you start going to school when you're, I don't know, 5, 6. years old and you want to complete it to perfection.
Yep.
You want to go to a level that they say there's nothing else beyond this.
Sure.
Congratulations, you made it to the final round and there's really nothing beyond this, so you must leave. So we're all perfectionists. And my advice to myself, my first year PhD student, is take it easy, communicate with your advisor.
Mm.
Because, like coming back to the, same view of a master's student, not thinking that professors are also, somebody like us. Like I thought that I cannot, easily communicate with my advisor. But when I started doing that, communicate like, hey, I think this way of communication will be better for me, will work better for me.
Mm-hmm.
First, I thought I cannot do that. But as soon as I opened up, he was, my advisor was so open. And that really helped me a lot. So I remind my students now that, you need to tell me. And I follow up with them. Every now and then I 10 minutes of my meeting, I don't talk about research. I ask like how you're doing, family life, and try to find any clues that they might be under stress, that they might be afraid of sharing that with me. So take it easy and share, not everything.
Yeah.
We are a professional family, as we always say. So there are boundaries. But if it is something work related that can, affect other sides of your life, you need to share that also with your advisor.
Yeah. That's good advice. And it sounds like you've internalized that as now on the other side of things as a
Yeah.
professor with his own students. So
Yes. Yeah.
full circle. Okay, last question. And I know you have many because I was around for
Mhm.
some of them. But
Yes.
what is a good memory or story you have from your time as a PhD student?
Obviously, going to conferences always was, the highlight of all the activities that we were doing. Same thing with Michelle Barsoom, with Yuri. We were at conferences with Yuri and hanging out, with your advisor and going different places in the conference, going to different places and chat and hang out and have fun was the highlight, one of the big highlights, I believe. Now more focus on PhD. Michel Barsoom is big in sailing. So even I think if you go to his research website, the beginning, the landing page has I think it's a cover photo of a newsletter that he's like sailing. You feel like it's a pro sailing. So he used to take us to his beach house and do fun. He would take us, every one of us, for sailing, and he was not afraid of any gusty ocean. So when it
Wow.
was not even that it's calm, we would still do it and always create a lot of fun stories around that. At Yuri's house, we always had the summer and winter parties. It was always so much fun that we all hang out and just chat beyond the regular research. It was, and we did a lot of activities.
Yeah.
You
Playing
know, you
volleyball. That's one I remember a lot. Playing volleyball.
Yes, yeah, you were playing volleyball, and I was making kebabs, and
Yeah. Yeah. But Yuri would
it
come over and
was
play volleyball too, which was always fun.
yes, yeah, yes, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's good to remember those good things outside the lab,
Hmm.
where you're
Yeah,
really enjoying the people that you're working with.
yeah. People. That's the most important part of any job. If you have a job that you don't like the people around you, you better change it. And I've been lucky always to be surrounded by people I enjoy. My PhD, my research group, they're all like, I was still in contact. Obviously, my postdoc time, everyone, it was just so much fun. And even now, with my colleagues, I enjoy people around me. And I always remind everyone, if you find that your advisor, even, it's not really, you don't enjoy it, it's better to plan early on to find a solution or even change your research group, because it's so important to find that job that you enjoy the people around
Yeah,
you.
completely
Yeah.
agree. Well, Babak, it has been a pleasure. Thank you
Well,
for coming
thank
on
you
the
for
show.
having me. Yeah.
Thanks for telling your story. Um, I know we'll say this again, but if anyone wants to submit to the nanoartography competition, it is active until the end of the
hmm
month. Anything else you want to plug? Are you hiring for your research group or anything?
I was hired. Yes, I always look for motivated, passionate students. This year, I hired one excellent PhD student just for this fall.
Hmm.
But if they are interested, they can apply to Purdue University. I plan to hire through the pool of applicants that we get through either the materials engineering or mechanical engineering departments that students who get admitted. So that's
Nice.
always an opening. And if there's more, I usually post it on LinkedIn that people can see and apply if there are more openings.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I don't want to keep you any longer, but it was really nice to catch up.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is excellent. Thank you for running this excellent podcast.
Thanks to Babak for coming on the show. If you or someone you know wants to be interviewed on Impact Factor, feel free to reach out via Instagram and follow us for updates at Impact Factor Pod. Thank you all for listening and have a great week.